The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, we are never lacking for things to talk about in football season, especially in November with the college football playoff coming down the pike, the inaugural 12-team playoff. But we've got even more to talk about. It's a bit of an overlap season, so we'll discuss a little bit basketball before the end of the program. Is this Tennessee defense better than 1998? 4 reasons Tennessee should hammer Mississippi State this day in Tennessee sports history. And this got me thinking a little bit. I was talking to some people in the college football world. And where do you stop the transfer portal? Could you really tell a young man that, hey, I don't like playing for Mississippi State, so I'm going to go play for Tennessee during the season? Which raises the question, if you could trade for any player in the SEC and you're Tennessee, who would it be? Florida sticking with Billy Napier? I don't believe that at all. The Vols' path to a 5 seed, which I totally agree with Caleb, is the most preferred seed of them all. And yes, I would even include a potential bye. Possibly. I'm still mulling that one over. I'll have an answer for you. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir? As we'll lead it off with the voice of the Vols, Bob Kesling, retiring. Hey, how are you, Caleb?
I am good. How are you doing today, Dave?
Never better. Never better. And want to jump into it right now. It is today's tough question, and we can make it a poll question as well. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. The show represented by Banks & Jones. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They will not. banksandjones.com. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, let's make it a poll question, because I have strong feelings on this, very strong feelings on this. And Caleb, call me out if you think it's personal, because just like I've gotten to know you, I've gotten to know one of the people that we have talked about over the past quarter of a century. And I think I know Tennessee football pretty well. And I think I know the history of it and how important this hire is moving forward. So first of all, Bob Kesling retires after 25 years. I remember being at his press conference, 25 years gone, blink of an eye. It's unbelievable. But he decides to retire. This was something that I was told actually before the season began would become a reality. And I've talked to a couple of different people with knowledge of that. And it was either going to be this year or next year. But the decision was hastened a bit, and it is this year. So he comes out with the announcement. So before we get to the potential replacements for Bob Kesling, what are your thoughts on Kesling's tenure, replacing a legend in John Ward? For those that don't remember, and I thought Brent Hubbs of BallQuest did a great job of pointing this out, John Ward almost demanded as much honor and respect as any athlete or coach that had been at Tennessee. And at his passing, they had a huge event that they don't have for a lot of coaches that pass away. He was that beloved, Caleb. Now, I'm trying to figure with your age how much John Ward had an impact on you, because you're a little bit younger than me. I grew up in the time that a lot of the games weren't on television, Caleb. So a lot of them, especially basketball, you had to listen to on the radio. So John Ward was a really, really big deal. He was as synonymous with Tennessee athletics as any coach. So going back a little bit, Kesling replaces John Ward in 1998. What are your memories of John Ward?
So we're starting with John Ward. Okay. Yes, John Ward, I remember very, very, very vaguely for a couple of years riding in the car with my dad, listening to him. My dad actually listened to him a lot more because similar to you, I mean, my dad was listening to Tennessee athletics in the late 60s, early 70s. And at that point, there was even less TV. So all you had was the radio. And John Ward, I think, started in 67. So he obviously had a big impact. So no, I knew that he was very, very, very well beloved. And it was really across the state of Tennessee. And quite honestly, for those who don't know, John Ward probably the Vol network reached a larger sphere through radio than most radio broadcast networks did at the time. It had a huge impact on Tennessee becoming a national brand and recruiting well like that.
Agreed. Okay, so hit that like and subscribe button if you agree with me. And if you don't, go ahead and click the thumbs up button. We'd greatly appreciate that. John Wilkerson should be the next voice of the Vols. And I don't believe it's close. We can discuss some of the other potential candidates, of which I have nothing against. But let's talk about John Wilkerson for just a second, who has been the studio host for a number of years. And that's precluded him, Caleb, from going to most of the Tennessee football games. As a matter of fact, when he and I worked together, he didn't go to any of the games. So he sacrificed to be the studio host. He is an absolute broadcast professional. And I will tell you this, that he would do a fantastic job at the head chair as the voice of the Vols. Caleb, there's no doubt in my mind. And I'm curious what your impressions are of John Wilkerson. And then we'll talk about some of the other potential candidates.
Yeah, John Wilkerson, I think, would be great. And he obviously has a pretty good track record as a broadcaster. I mean, for a lot of the basketball games, I know he would do the scores and recaps and all the stuff that you do to set up Bob Kesling coming back from a break. So, I mean, it's as smooth of a transition as you could possibly have. I mean, it's as smooth of a transition as you have a 40-year head football coach and his offensive coordinator of 35 years is in line to take over when the head coach retires. Isn't it that type of transition, Dave? If you think about it?
Yeah. Are you referring to a potential Johnny Majors to Philip Fulmer transition? Because it would be a lot smoother than that.
Well, no, I wasn't going there. But, you know, I was going to go Bob Devaney to Tom Osborne. Let's do some Hall of Famers, okay? Bob Devaney to Tom Osborne at Nebraska was a smooth transition. Another one was, I mean, I don't want to go through the list because, okay, it's a little bit more difficult because, as you know, with head coaches in sports, the transition never really works out that well for the person that follows the legend all the time. So it should work better in radio and broadcast.
Well,
yeah.
let's talk about, before we get to his potential replacement, what Bob Kesling has meant to the University of Tennessee, because in this day and age of you don't know who you're hiring and you probably want a polished young guy. I think that's in general the way people are hired nowadays. Tennessee went with Bob Kesling, who it was common knowledge, politic for the job, wanted the job. And why wouldn't he? You can speak to this. That was beginning to be the time where there wasn't a head sports director, so to speak, at local television stations. I mean, there are now, but they're getting paid, a third of what they used to get paid, even counting into inflation back in the day. So he wanted to be the voice of the Vols, and he buddied up with Doug Dickey. And he has been a consistent broadcaster that has, I think, been something that the Ball Network was able to grow with. And he's done that for a quarter of a century, more than a quarter of a century. What are your impressions of Bob Kesling? And then we'll talk about possible replacements.
Yeah, so while I'm aware of John Ward, the legend, and I was never not aware of it, I obviously, because of my age, was much more familiar with Bob Kesling. And so my experience with my experiences are much more with Bob Kesling. Bob Kesling has always, I felt, did a great job of calling the score and keeping you informed on exactly what's going on. But Dave, you want to know my impression of Bob Kesling more than anything else?
Lay it on me.
He's had his color commentators have been hilarious, and I love them because, let's be honest, Tim Priest for a while and Burt Bertelkamp are just two of the best color commentators you could have ever asked for in football, right? In basketball. No
question. I think Burt Bertelkamp is fantastic. We'll probably have him on the program from time to time. I feel bad for Tim Priest. He got tired of all the negativity around the program, and he stepped aside, and now they hire a guy named Josh Heupel, and he's doing pretty good. So and Bob Kesling.
Priest borderline wanted to cuss out Butch Jones in the middle of a game one time, and he basically did. You could hear it in his voice. He was like, he all but called him an idiot in the game.
Well, I don't think he would necessarily mind me saying this at this point. A lot of time has passed, but after one of Butch Jones's first disappointing games, and I'm not even sure it was a loss, but it was a close game. Okay, I remember bumping into Tim Priest, and I said, "What'd you think?" He goes, "Well, it looks like they're not being coached to me." And this was early, like the first month that Butch Jones had been the head coach. And in retrospect, wasn't he spot on?
He nailed it. He straight up nailed it. I mean, they weren't being coached.
All right, so let's get to some possible replacements, because I'm not trying to make enemies among people that I know, but to me, it's John Wilkerson and everybody else. And I had some people on Facebook yesterday say you open up the checkbook to Mike Keith and try to get him back. I've got a lot of respect for Mike Keith. I think he is absolutely one of the best play-by-play guys in the NFL. But here's the problem, Caleb, with the NFL. There are only 32 of those jobs. So that's a very coveted job. And I'm of the mindset, based off what I've been told, that Mike Keith's making a lot of money. Would he want to pick up his family and move back to Knoxville after they went the Kesling route instead of Mike Keith?
Also,
I'm going to go ahead and I doubt that he would do that at this point in his career, because he's got to be mid-50s now.
Yeah, and if you're Mike Keith, you just have to call NFL games. If you're the Vol Network, you got to call the college football games and every men's college basketball game. That's a lot more of a workload than if you're calling the NFL games.
Oh, absolutely. The rest of your year is pretty much a 9-to-5 job, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
You're going to meet with fundraisers, boosters, fans, whatever they call them at that NFL level. And I see you have who should replace Bob Kesling as voice of the Vols. John Wilkerson, 40%, Mike Keith, 20%. Can we include on that? Can we reset that? I want to include a couple of guys who I want to address specifically in Brian Rice and Tom Hart. Okay, I think Brian Rice, the voice of the Lady Vols, would do a fine job. I have no problem with Brian Rice getting that job. Tom Hart would be an excellent hire if he wanted to leave ESPN. Now, he does work an absolute ton, so the workload might actually be less if he moved over. Now, the other factor with Wilkerson is that maybe he wouldn't do Tennessee baseball anymore. Well, I'm sorry, but I think he would find a way to do that, and I think that Tennessee football ultimately is the face of the program. If you were at Duke, we'd be having another conversation. I'm trying to think of a baseball only school, but there's really not one. You could figure those things out, just like John Wilkerson has figured out how to do 6 to 9 a.m., which he currently does on the Sports Animal. So
John Wilkerson may be the only person that would prefer to keep the Tennessee baseball job over Tennessee football. I know he loves baseball.
He does, and that's super cool. But I can tell you this, and it's not something that John's told me specifically, but I know that he wants it. Why wouldn't he want it? after all these years of being a good soldier. Now, that being said, you don't just hire somebody because they were a good soldier for all these years. John has so much talent in terms of radio broadcasting, Caleb. It's to me a slam dunk. I was actually surprised, and I don't want to rip anybody's opinion because I love the interaction on Facebook. It not only shows me that people are watching and listening and Twitter and social media, but it also a lot of times gives me story ideas. So I was surprised by the passion that was there in Kesling's announcement. And when I said it's a slam dunk for Wilkerson. So right now, the poll question, if you want to vote, please do so. John Wilkerson, 47%, Mike Keith, 35%, Brian Rice, 11%, Tom Hart, 6%. I don't mean this as any insult to Mike Keith, but I really am surprised that so many people want him to be in the running. I think he's doing a great job with the Titans, and I think he knows Tennessee football, so he's got that going for him. But he's had a full-time job on the weekends too. Kesling, you have to remember, is not going to have any hang-ups with pronouncing Albert Tawina's name. If something comes up where this is the first year starter since Albert Tawina, he's going to have that all in his memory banks. Same thing for Nico Iamaleava here in 5 years or so. So you have that context that you wouldn't have with any of the other guys. And Tom Hart has some context. Don't get me wrong. He has a lot of context. Brian Rice is younger. Again, not ripping Brian Rice. I think he's phenomenal. And as a matter of fact, there on the off week, I sent him a Twitter message to tell him how good he was at football. Now, I've also heard rumors that there's a guy that Learfield who will make this decision that they like that covers another SEC school. That, to me, is the worst of the possible scenarios because that means you want a super polished guy that you can present to potential advertisers. Well, John Wilkerson works with advertisers, probably has meetings with advertisers this afternoon. So to me, he checks all the boxes. It's analogous to this, Caleb. If the Dallas Cowboys want to hire somebody, doesn't Bill Belichick, doesn't he check all the boxes? The one box he might not check is that he isn't a little bit younger. So John, who I believe is 60, he's basically 10 years ahead of me in everything. He's 10 years ahead of me of graduating from high school. He's 10 years ahead of me of graduating UT because we were both on the 6-year plan. We enjoyed ourselves. And he's 10 years older than me. So he's right at 60, if not 59 or 61 possibly. To me, if you look at this and you're Learfield and you're judging whether or not to replace Bob Kesling with a young, flashy guy that is maybe, 32 years old, that can be the guy for the next 25 years or late 30s. If they call Caleb Calhoun, no offense to you, Caleb, but I'm going with John Wilkerson. Just because he checks every single box, with the exception of maybe they'd like for him to be a little bit younger. Maybe. That's all I can think of why they wouldn't offer him the job like in the coming weeks. Give Bob Kesling his flowers. That's fine. Let him celebrate his retirement. That's great. But I tell you what, I would reach out to John Wilkerson pretty quickly because he is so ingrained in the community that whether it's fundraising or something else, or just staying on that 6 to 9 slot at the Sports Animal, which I know firsthand can be incredibly tiring. I've done it. I'm trying to think of one box that he doesn't check. Caleb, I'll ask you that question. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks and Jones. Vote now. Who should be the next voice of the boss? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. they'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, give me one reason that Tennessee shouldn't hire John Wilkerson.
I can't think of one. The only thing I might say is, again, they may not want to do it if John Wilkerson wants to stick with doing baseball. Not that it wouldn't be about John Wilkerson's personal workload. Maybe he doesn't mind the workload, but I think the Vol Network would say, yeah, we want you doing fundraisers and all these other stuff in the spring. You know what I mean? Because this, like you said, it's a 9-to-5 job. When you're not calling the games, you're having to schmooze every single booster and do all this stuff with them for, 24/7. Aren't you? And so they may say, if he says, I want to stick with baseball, they may come around and say, well, you're going to have to pick because we need you to be, they're going to want him on the Big Orange Caravan and stuff like that in the spring. They're not going to want him dealing with baseball. That would be my only thing that might happen, that might hold him back.
The thing that scares me most of all about this deal, Caleb, is they would lowball him. That they would come in because they know they can get a young guy from another SEC school, and I'm not going to mention him because to hire him would be an absolute disgrace. But and I don't want to take a shot at some poor random dude just driving down the road. But if they did that, it's because they could get him because of the prestige that goes with the job for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, whereas John Wilkerson's resume would warrant what Bob Kesling got, which was about $150,000 a year, I believe, in 80 or 98, and I'm sure has gone up since. I'm sure he's got cost of living raises. They do that in every profession other than the newspaper business.
To be fair, I had entertained media jobs in New York. New York City is the one place where they will actually give you a cost of living increase. Because it's literally impossible to live there without a cost of living increase raise.
That's right. Some papers will give you one, and then the next day give you a mandatory pay cut for everybody across the board and take away your cost of living raise. So you walk out of that office. Perhaps this has happened to me. You walk out of that office thinking I got a 3% raise, only to find out you walk out of the office the next day and you got a 6% pay cut.
For those who don't understand, newspapers are all bought out by corporations now who care nothing for their employees. And rather than focusing on news, they focus on cutting costs, and they treat it like a leveraged buyout private equity firm. And that's what Dave and I have had to deal with in the past, right? And yes. So I could see them lowballing him. But look, I got to be honest. Part of this is winning over with the fans to a certain degree and having a personal connection. I mean, Bob Kesling got the job, but before he got the job, he had been I guess it was a JP Sports broadcaster, play-by-play, also a local news TV reporter throughout Knoxville. So everybody was very familiar with him, weren't they?
Yes.
When he got the job.
Very familiar with him. And I think the JP opportunity was very intelligent by him because that checked off his box of, has he done play-by-play? He has camera presence, but has he done play-by-play? So to me, it's John Wilkerson, and it's not close. I'll be very disappointed if it's not John Wilkerson, and we'll see what happens. But to me, I really have racked my brain since I wrote the column that I wrote yesterday of a box that he wouldn't check. And the only one I could think of is that perhaps they think he's a little bit older. But Caleb, let's go ahead and say this. If John can give you 10 years, wouldn't you have 10 years from somebody who knows Tennessee, who speaks to Tennessee's fan base and is beloved by Tennessee's fan base, as opposed to 25 years from a dude that has to win everybody over?
Yeah, I don't like the whole, I've never been a fan of let me find the guy for 25 years. I mean, if you find him, great. But and I say this not just with radio broadcasters, I see this with sports hires, coaching hires. I don't understand nixing a guy because you could only get 10 years out of him. Those 10 years may be the years you win a national title. I mean,
right.
Florida only got 6 out of Urban Meyer. I think they wouldn't trade those 6 for anything.
Let's don't forget this real quick. All right. Who would be the potential play-by-play the color commentator. Who would be because it's not going to be Pat Ryan. He's ready to go. I've been told that I wasn't real crazy about doing this past year, actually. So Charles Davis is one that I tell you, if you want some pep, every time I used to call Charles to be on the show, he would always answer it the same way. And hello, this is Charles. So if you want some good, perhaps quirky energy on there, Charles Davis would be fantastic.
Oh, I think that would be a great one. Charles Davis would actually be a really good one. And he has plenty of experience being an analyst for years and years and years. You know what? I'm with Adam. I don't care that it's basketball. Bring Ron Slay on, man. Have Ron Slay be the color commentator for football and basketball. You know how much fun he'd be?
Oh, I don't think that there's any question that Ron Slay's in line to be the color commentator for basketball. Now, I do know that they pay very little for that, so I don't know that he wants to come to Nashville. Now,
he lives in Nashville.
Hmm?
Oh, he lives in Nashville. You mean to Knoxville?
Oh, yeah, from Nashville. I don't think he wants to make that trip over. I'll tell you a guy who's made a name for himself recently in the local market is Kevin Simon. That's probably who I would hire. And then, yeah, I think that's open for interpretation. But the most important hire, obviously, is the team that is the initial play-by-play guy. That's what you've got to do. Bobby Rader would be good color. Yeah, quick story about Bobby Rader. He had me on his show there in the Tri-Cities and said, well, Dave, we figured we'd have you on because a lot of people don't like what you've been writing. Well, this was during the Philip Fulmer's getting fired thing. What was I supposed to write? And my response was, well, you shouldn't have called me if your listeners don't like me on your show. That was the last time I ever did that show. All right, so we're going to move on. We're going to move on.
I mean, and by the way, you were just it's funny that you made so many enemies doing that, Dave, because you were literally just a beat reporter reporting the facts.
I know, and I got lumped together with John Adams. Like, it was always you and John, you and John, you and John. I'm like, I mean, my source was the late Mike Hamilton. It was a pretty good source, Caleb. It's the athletic director. And it doesn't, I don't mind saying it now, it doesn't get any better than that, does it?
No, that's a pretty darn good source. You mean your source was the guy who was going to make the decision over whether or not to fire Philip Fulmer? Now, to be fair, let me ask you this.
Yes.
We know boosters have a hand in this. Did boosters demand that Mike Hamilton fire Fulmer, or did they give him free reign and just say, we're not going to step in if you choose to fire Fulmer?
I can answer that question really quickly. He did an exclusive interview with me, and he had someone measure his email responses. And about 60% were okay with it. 40% were like, don't fire Fulmer no matter what. And the interview with me was right before the week they played South Carolina. And he said, Tennessee is not supposed to be a 6-5 program, I believe, was the quote he had exactly. And he had been telling Philip Fulmer kind of the other side of it, that he was going to get a chance to rebuild it one more time. We know in retrospect that wasn't the case. And I, unfortunately, was the one that was in the middle of that had to tell Philip Fulmer that, you know, the athletic director said it was a very fair interview and a fair story. So, I mean, Mike Hamilton played both sides of it. God rest his soul. He was a great, great man. Probably could have handled that a little bit better. So, all right, we're going to move on. We don't usually spend that long on a topic, but I'm on my soapbox. If it's not John Wilkerson, I'm very, very upset. 4 downs now, brought to you by Double D Piping.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, let's change up the poll question if we can. Would you be disappointed if Tennessee didn't hammer Mississippi State? And you can argue that 20 points is hammering, 40 points is hammering. I'll let you decide what you want to do there. But the one thing you have to do is what Cooper Mays says, because he's big and mean.
Cooper Mays here.
Hit like and subscribe.
All right, 4 reasons why Tennessee should hammer the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And number 1 is this.
Coop here. First down.
All right, we haven't had the breakout game from Nico, and Caleb and I should take back or pull down some of our broadcasts where we said this week's the breakout game, because we both believed in Nico off sources, off our eye test, and everything. He hasn't had the breakout game, but Caleb, I'll tell you this. I'm completely sold on Nico, not only in 2025 when he has another offseason to mature, but this year. And this year going forward, I believe Nico Iamaleava can be a championship-winning quarterback. Now, on the flip side, you've got the president, who you mentioned yesterday, Michael Van Buren Jr. He ranks 11th in the SEC. Nico ranks 6th best in the SEC, which is solid as a first-year starter, but if not for some drop passes and some holds, he'd probably be considerably higher. So there's a big-time quarterback advantage, and I'll have my prediction coming up. Caleb?
No, there's a huge quarterback advantage. Tennessee should have the much better quarterback. I want to be fair to Michael Van Buren Jr. Blake Shapen got hurt. He was forced in and inherited a mess, taking over a mess. He's actually very similar to the president. Just a quick history lesson. Martin Van Buren took over for Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson straight up crashed the economy because he got rid of the National Bank, which created a massive panic in 1841, wrecked everything, and Martin Van Buren was left holding the bag because Andrew Jackson mismanaged the economy. Okay. That's kind of Michael Van Buren is forced in because other people mismanaged everything before him. So he's in a really bad situation.
Ed is for UT, says, I'll be excited if they score over 30. That's going to happen, and I'll tell you why. What down is next, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, second down, and you can read this on offthehooksports.com. State can't stop the pass. They're 15th in the SEC in defending the pass. They allow 250 yards per game. We all said that Nico had a great game against Kentucky, and he threw for how many yards? About 290, is that right?
292, yeah.
Okay. I mean, he can throw for 250 yards and a half with a hangover. Okay, so he's going to throw for over 350 yards. I'm not taking the narrative of Nico arrives this week. He just has to show up and play his game, and he's going to throw for about 300 and I'd say 330 actually, and about 4 or 5 touchdowns. This game, tell me if you would argue this. This game is closer, this team and this matchup is closer to Kent State than it is Kentucky.
Defensively, yes. Mississippi State defensively is closer to Kent State than Kentucky. I think offensively they might be better than Kentucky. So offensively,
okay, but we're splitting. You would agree we're splitting hairs a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, these are two bad. If they played each other, here, I'll work on that. I'll reach out to our gambling expert and find out where Tennessee would be picked. Where Mississippi State and Kent State, where the line would be. What down's next?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
State can't stop the run either. They allow 211 yards rushing per game. That is 16th in the SEC. And Caleb, check out this stat of the moment. That's 50 yards worse than Florida, who's 15th. I mean, they're not just bad at stopping the run. They're historically bad at stopping the run.
Yes. It's funny you mentioned that because you're right, they're historically bad. They're absolutely terrible. We'll get that out of the way. But also, it might hurt Nico's chance to get a lot of yards because he might the difference between this and Kent State, Tennessee had a lot of short fields against Kent State because Kent State was so god-awful that Tennessee's almost basically would get the ball at the 40 every time. And I mean, they should have. I can't believe Kent State didn't agree to a mercy rule on that one. But Mississippi State won't give them that. But how is Nico going to get his 300 yards if every time Dylan Sampson touches the ball, he runs 50 yards to the house?
Well, he might, but he's going to, because Josh Heupel wants it to be that way. 4 downs brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right, 4 reasons why Tennessee will hammer the Bulldogs. State can't score. I mean, that's what you thought that Jeff Lebby would bring to this football team, but State's 12th in the SEC in points scored per game, which is 29.1 per contest. I mean, how are they going to score against one of the best defenses in the nation? My final prediction, Tennessee 48, Mississippi State 9. And if I could go back and change it, I probably would say Mississippi State 6.
You don't think State can get more than 6 points? Yeah, maybe not against this defense. You might have a point. See, I feel like they could get a touchdown. They could catch Tennessee off guard at some point. I think they can get to double digits in this game, honestly. I think they can get to 10 to 14.
I think Tennessee controls the clock with high tempo. I think they come after Martin Van Buren, the junior, the second.
Michael Van Buren.
I know, but I have a problem with this recent influx of suffixes with names. Everybody's the second or the third or a junior or a senior. I'm the second, but I don't go by Dave Hooker the second. I mean, what is the deal with all these suffixes on names, Caleb?
More people are now juniors in the seconds than they used to be. What's your beef, bro? What's your beef?
Suffixes. That's my beef. All right. So you think Van Buren can lead State to what? Have you given out your final pick, or are you saving that for the end of the program?
Saving that for the end of the program. But I think Van Buren can get them to double digits.
All right. If you had a bet that Van Buren could get them to 6 or 13, what would you pick?
I'd lean 13 at that point. I would definitely lean 13 at that point. I don't think it'd be close.
You heard him say it. Make a short out of that. Stat of the day now is brought to you by our good friends at the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. So Caleb Calhoun, what do you have for our stat of the day? Is it political again? Because I know people were excited that you went the political route, and that scares me a little bit, but there we are.
No, I did all the patterns for Tennessee related to presidents over the week, so I'm done with those that were intriguing. But I will say this one is actually one that you had sent me that I wanted to save for Friday because it's a good one. Josh Heupel is the first Tennessee coach since one Philip Fulmer to guarantee that he won't be below 500 in SEC play his first 4 years as head coach at Tennessee.
Okay, that's pretty good. I think that was, our own, or Chris Lowe is the one that threw that out there. So kudos to Chris Lowe.
Now, to be fair, only one coach since then has lasted 4 years at Tennessee, and that was Butch Jones, who lasted 5. But, you know,
But other than that.
But all the other coaches had below 500 years within their first 3 years in the SEC, and Josh Heupel didn't have one within his first 4 years. I mean, I don't think Derek Dooley ever had a winning record in the SEC. Jeremy Pruitt did his second year. Lane Kiffin was he 500 in the SEC? Yeah, he was. He was 500 in the SEC his 1 year there at Tennessee.
He should have been over 500 if he hadn't blown the Alabama game. Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes, 5 locations to choose from. It's one of Hook's Hangouts, asiacafe.org. And they've also got that Brazilian Cocoa Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee that I love. It's fantastic. You can order an asiacafe.org. You give me those minutes, and I'm going to come back with a topic that'll absolutely set your hair on fire. If you could trade for any player in the SEC midseason, who would it be? I'm going to tell you who it is, and Caleb's going to have a problem with it. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
So I was talking with somebody tied into the SEC. And Caleb, if I would have told you 5 years ago that players were going to get paid and they were going to be able to transfer freely, you would have said what? Caleb, I think you're muted.
Rookie mistake. I would have said open up the checkbook wherever you can and go after any player you possibly can. And it doesn't matter when you should do it. And you would definitely get tampering and open negotiations with players on other teams that were disgruntled.
Okay, but what I'm asking, if I would have told you this all was going to happen 5 years ago, you probably would have said, nah, college football is never going to change those rules, right?
Yeah, I would have agreed that wouldn't happen. Yeah, I would okay. Absolutely agree with that.
So my argument back would have been what they're doing is anti-American and illegal. And you would have said, well, that's a pretty good point. Okay, why is it the SEC or the NCAA can prevent players from moving during the season? Caleb, to me, if you get a better job or I get a better job, of course, you have a contract and I have a contract, but it would be un-American to prevent that person from taking another job. So I ask you this. Do you think at some point mid-season transfers will happen? So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I think they will. I think there'll be a trade deadline at some point if the players don't unionize.
Here's the one caveat to this. Now, maybe the schools would start to do this. But Dave, you still have to be enrolled in school to play for the university. Enrolled in school. You can't enroll in the middle of a semester. It's not allowed. There's not a school in the world that allows that. Now you're saying schools would change those rules and be like, if you play a sport on scholarship, then you can enroll mid-semester, and we're going to make an exception because it's all about the academic integrity or something like that. But in reality, it's like we want to get these players to play for us as quickly as possible.
Yes.
You're saying schools will allow that. They will start allowing mid-term enrollments. Does that exist? Like, how do you enroll midterm in a semester and you haven't taken any of the class ahead of time? Like, how do you logistically work that out?
I don't know, but I just don't listen. If you become an employee of the particular university, just like what do they call an associate athletic director, you can't keep them from leaving in the middle of the season. I'm not saying it would be bad for them. I ask you this: if Tennessee could trade for a player, if Tennessee could go pick up a player off the SEC waiver wire, who would it be right now?
If they could go pick up a player off the SEC waiver wire.
Yes. I mean, to me, the most obvious one, because he's shown that he could play and he's played at a high level and he's got a lot of eligibility left, would be Ryan Williams, right? The receiver who Tennessee needs help at receiver. Gosh, I never thought we'd say that before the season, but Tennessee needs help at receiver, right?
Yes, that's a good one. Ryan Williams, that's a very good one. You're right. I was thinking receivers, and I mean, I really can't, dispute what you said with him. That would be a perfect pickup.
Okay. I've got another one. It's Alex Rayner, the kicker at Kentucky. Now, you defended Max Gilbert, who went 0 for 3 kicking field goals against Kentucky and could have cost Tennessee the game, which you just seemed to think, hey, no big deal. But if you get Alex Rayner, who is 13 of 13 in field goals, or Peyton Woodring of Georgia, who is 14 of 15, even Randy Bond of Texas A&M, who is 16 of 18. Wouldn't that be an upgrade? Max Gilbert, by the way, 12 of 18 for a defensive team that prides itself on running the football. Something about that martini doesn't mix quite right.
Okay, fair enough. You might have a point with the kicker. I was going to go here. GBMFO beat me to it. Will Campbell. The one that, the person that resulted in Lance Hurd transferring to Tennessee to begin with. How about just try to go for Will Campbell, the better offensive tackle, the one who is significantly better than Lance Hurd?
How many offensive tackles could you name right now that would perhaps be better than Lance Hurd, who I think some people are throwing the towel in on a little bit early?
Well, Will Campbell is the top one, but Kelvin Banks, also at Texas, is another one. I think he might be he's right there on Will Campbell's level. The only difference between Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks is Kelvin Banks doesn't have a good quarterback. So those are the top two. Nobody on the interior line. I mean, Tate Ratledge and Tyler Booker are both good interior linemen in the SEC, but you could maybe trade Andre Carrick for one of those two, but I'd much rather trade Lance Hurd for Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks. Honestly.
Well, you're going to have to throw in another couple of players to make that trade happen. I don't think that anybody's going to take Lance Hurd straight up. I still think Lance Hurd.
I don't think they would take him for free.
No, I mean, even if they had to pay off his contract, I don't think they're taking Lance Hurd. And I'll go ahead and tell you that I think he's going to get better, and I think he's going to be a solid offensive tackle. But the question I have intrinsically in him that may never go away is he a fast twitch muscle guy? I think it was Ollie Lane, who will join us later in the program, who said that he was a big, slow-moving body. What was the exact quote, Caleb?
It's something about slow feet or something. I totally forgot what he said.
I think it was a slow-moving person, actually, is the exact quote. In over 40 states, and she doesn't charge you for her services, it is Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Okay, let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history, and that's brought to you by our friends at the Hemp House. The Hemp House, easy for me to say, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. Caleb, this day in Tennessee sports history is?
This day in Tennessee sports history, it's the 21-year anniversary, Dave, of a game that you and I both consider maybe the best game Philip Fulmer ever coached. When Tennessee went down to Miami in South Beach as 12.5-point underdogs and won 10-6. And the ugliest win I think I've ever watched. But Philip Fulmer's strategy, basically Philip Fulmer banked on the fact that Larry Coker doesn't coach his team well. He basically banked on they're not well coached. So let's just play careful and not make mistakes, and they'll screw up because they're so poorly coached.
I have 3 takeaways from that game. One, do you remember the Hail Mary where they threw it to Kellen Winslow Jr. all by himself, lined up on the right side of the formation instead of the 3 wide receivers, and he almost caught it over Antoine Stewart?
No, it was Jason Allen, right?
I thought Jason Allen was on the – but anyway, he almost made the catch. For those that don't know, Kellen Winslow Jr. was going to be a special athlete, but what was it, a car accident or was it a motorcycle accident?
Motorcycle accident, and he was a rapist. So, those two things.
Oh, I didn't even know the latter. Okay.
He's in prison for it right now.
Oh, wow. Other than that, he was a great dude. And that was the game in which he said, I'm a soldier after the game.
At the height of the onset of the war in Iraq that had just launched, he goes, it's war. You're out there to kill. Because he said he laid a block where he knocked 2 guys out. And he said, yeah, I was going for the injury. If I didn't hurt him, he would have hurt me. And then he said, yeah, it's war. You're out there to kill. I'm a effing soldier.
Yeah.
And
my other takeaway from that is I got in trouble for staying at the Ritz in Coral Gables. But we had an intern that got me a discount. But at the time, the GM of our station called Jimmy Himes into his office and said, what the hell is Dave doing staying at the Ritz? And he goes, it was just $99. And he said, well, if that was $99, he could have got a Motel 6 for cheaper. And they said, well, we have an intern that's dad is a VP at the Ritz, so it got him a deal. By the way, have you ever stayed in a hotel like the Ritz?
No. Never stayed in a hotel like the Ritz.
It's bizarre because it gives you an insight.
I'm not fancy pants like Dave.
I know. It gives you an insight into how the other half live, because there were 4 people that showed me where the bedroom was, where the bathroom was, and where the safe was, as if I had never been in a motel room before in my life. 4 people in the room. It was crowded. It was me, my wife, and 4 people showing me where everything was.
Really?
It was bizarre. I was wondering why everybody was walking me to my room. And so apparently that's how they do it.
Wow. That's pretty impressive, actually.
I can write a book about road stories. Have I told you about going to the Playboy Mansion?
Oh, you told me that one, yeah. Have you ever read the book How the Other Half Lives by Jacob Riis?
No. Is that about rich people?
It's considered, yes, it created a lot of resentment at the turn of the century and was one of the books that may have almost led to the rise of communism in the U.S. Even though he was very anti-communist himself, but when he wrote out exactly how greedy the rich people were, it created like a total wave of anger at them. And yeah, there was almost a communist revolution after he wrote that book.
They need to make a documentary out of that. And by the way, I watched the Whitney Houston documentary. Not a great ending. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Ollie Lane coming up next. It'll be the former Vol, and we'll get his thoughts on a couple of different things, but one in particular, we'll get Tennessee's path to the 5 seed. Are players aware that the 5 seed is a benefit? Because it is. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Welcome back to the program. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We go to our ball line. Our VFL line is brought to you by our good friends at Peak IV Hydration. We love Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. Go to peakivhydration.com. You can also order the patches online. They're awesome. Tell them that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker sent you. Also want to thank Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. Ollie Lane joins us now, former Tennessee center and all-around great dude. Ollie, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys doing today?
Well, so Tennessee's players said to a man in their Monday and Tuesday press conferences that they weren't paying attention to that college football playoff selection show. What's the truth? Do you think they were?
Yeah, maybe to a point. But, you know, we didn't really pay attention to it a whole lot in 22 when it came out. It's kind of still new in a sense. And I mean, now you got so many teams with this power rankings that it's hard to, like, I guess, really gauge where you're at in a term. And I mean, I think where they put Tennessee at in that ranking is about right of where they should be at. And so I don't know how much of a focus is put on that. Maybe if any motivation drawn from that is just to be higher than what they are currently. I don't know if they would take it as a point of, oh, we're already in it. Like, let's go ahead and set up shop and plan on being in the playoffs. I wouldn't say it's putting that kind of mentality into them. If anything, I would say it's putting in, hey, we got some more work to do to secure up a spot for this playoff.
Let's talk about this offense for a second, Ollie, because while Nico hasn't yet put up against a quality opponent, I should say, a Hendon Hooker type of day, given the last 6 quarters, I'm completely sold that he can lead Tennessee to big things this year, that he can be a championship quarterback. Am I putting the cart before the horse, or tell me what you've seen the last 6 quarters of football?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I mean, I think you're completely right. I mean, that was my expectations for Nico all along. I think he's going to be a really developed, polished quarterback in his later part of his career. He's in his development phase right now. He's still learning and picking up new things. And I mean, every single time he steps on the field, and especially as you pointed out, his last 6 quarters is just a little snippet of his resume. He's continuing to improve and get better throughout the season, and he's becoming more and more comfortable with the system and what all the coaching staff's asking for him, and what all everybody needs from him to be able to put us in a position to win every week. And he's continued to do that and grow into that. And I really saw it, especially against Kentucky, is you saw him get more comfortable pushing the tempo, getting it going early, finding open receivers in shorter options, and actually connecting on a lot more of his passes that were kind of out hitting different targets instead of where it needed to be. And I saw him do that. Now, obviously, you got to get the receivers to kind of step up and make some more catches consistently. But all in all, Nico is following the correct development track, and he's only continuing to prove everybody that he's got everything that everybody expects of him.
Ollie, you brought up the receivers. There were a couple of drops last week, but the tackles finally showed a lot of improvement for the second, from the last 6 quarters, they've been good. How close is this offense really to finally putting it all together? And if they can they look like the 2022 offense?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's nothing that's holding this team back from being where it was at in 22 offensively, production-wise. I mean, the talent's there and all the pieces are there. It's just putting it together in a way that works uniform with everybody. And, I mean, they're continuing to figure it out and find what works, what scheme and play calling and play styling works for them best with the talent and players that they have over there. But, I mean, you can see, especially up front offensive line, they're continuing to improve throughout the season and play at a higher and higher clip each week. And, I mean, you see them just only continuing to put better clips on tape. And then it is creating more comfort for Nico in the pocket to be able to find his receivers, create more time for him. I like what they're doing with the rollout passes and stuff like that, buying more natural time for him to kind of sprint out, get more comfortable, use his legs and move it around. I saw a lot more assertiveness from Nico in his decision-making on when to run it, when to pass it, and when nothing was available for him and when he had to take off and go. And you could see it created more fluency in the offense. Now, obviously, they still weren't able to crack that first half score as effectively as we wanted to. But, I mean, you saw them moving the ball a lot better in that first half against Kentucky, and I hope they continue to take from that and continue to build it, and then now to strengthen when you get to that red zone, being able to finish it.
Let me ask you about something you would notice more than Caleb and I would, and that is the offensive tackle position. I know John Campbell had the one hold, but just your thoughts on how they're progressing along with Lance Hurd at left.
Yeah, I mean, they're progressing a far way. I mean, obviously, John's been beat up, and also with Lance, he's been beat up. But, I mean, they're coming along and playing really well for us to end out this season. I mean, you got guys like Dane Davis who's able to come in and still rotate and put in quality time for you, kind of take some of that load off everybody, give everybody a little bit of a breather, which is nice, especially when you want to start pushing this tempo, especially late in the season. You can kind of get a little worn out a lot faster just because of the wear and tear of all 10, 12 games starting to weigh on you a little bit. So, I mean, it's nice to see that they're starting to play a lot more complete. And especially when you get into the end of the season, you're not looking at maybe getting more improved play, but just consistent play. And, I mean, you're seeing it not only be more consistent, but the level of play is also improving. So, I mean, that's something to note as just how impressive it's getting. And, I mean, it all starts with your leader up front, Cooper Mays, and what he's been able to do to get these guys around him to step up their level of play and all buy in on the same mission and objective, and that's we got to protect Nico and move this football.
Ollie, let me ask you about what the issues were with the receivers last week, because there's now been, it seems like, a drop off in play with them. Is that because Are there issues there, or do you think they've just not been able to get in the rhythm because there were some other issues related to the passing game in previous weeks?
I think there's probably just a mixture of things that are going on. And I mean, at the end of the day, players just, occasionally have bad games and have stuff that they got to work on coming from that. And I think if you look at the Kentucky game, I think some of those missed opportunities were just missed opportunities that having given them back, they would probably make those catches. And looking back at it through the tape this week, I'm sure that they've just looked at that, made those decisions on what was wrong. Why didn't we follow through on these catches? And what do I got to do? As a wide receiver, you look up and you got to say, I've got to be able to make it up and do these things for my quarterback that's also struggling and under a lot of the media spotlight as well with that. Because, I mean, Nico had a great game, 292 passing yards, but that 292 could have easily been pushing 350, 400 if you catch a couple of those deep balls. And so it's just something that you look at everybody holding everybody accountable, holding them up and lifting them up to just letting them know, like, hey, this is some areas that could have been big plays for us. Let's just focus on it and keep working on it. It's going to happen. These big plays are going to come. We're going to connect and we're going to catch. Don't press. Don't do anything out of the ordinary to make it happen. Just allow the natural progression to happen and just focus on making those big plays the next time out.
Yeah, I'm gonna try, Ollie, to do something here. It's my best impression of Cooper Mays. You ready?
Yeah.
Because I have to read between the lines with Cooper, which a lot of times you have to do because everybody kind of wants to protected. So this is way back in September-ish of 2022. So this would have been Dylan Sampson's freshman year. And he goes like this, I like that guy. And his eyebrows raised. And I was like, okay, that means he really likes him, because Cooper doesn't say, I don't like that guy or I do like that guy. And he just kind of offered that up. And I'm curious if you have a Dylan Sampson story, because I've covered football for like 25 years, and you don't hear of running backs being leaders a lot of the times. But if you have a story, not to put you on the spot, about Dylan Sampson and his leadership capabilities and what he's done as a running back to assume that role.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it multiple times on a lot of places and to just a lot of people in my personal life. Dylan Sampson is just a great guy. He's a great personality. He's a super big light in the locker room. When he first came on the team, everybody enjoyed having him around and talking to him. And I'll never forget the first year that I wanted to host my own Ollie Lane camp at Gibbs. Trying to get everything set up and put together was a little difficult, but it's something that I wanted to do to give back to the community. And, Dylan was the first person that I went to ask him for help and kind of signing on and letting me attach his name to it. And he was super excited to be a part of it. And then when it came time for the camp, he was super involved in it, made every single kid that was part of that camp feel special for being there. And everybody was excited to see him. And, it's just nice to see him extend himself past something that he didn't have to do, that was just for a teammate, and to help out a community that he's not even from, that I'm from. Seeing somebody be able to do that was, super humbling, and I'm super thankful for him to be able to do that. But that just let me into more of what his personality is. And then just as I've seen him throughout the years continue to progress and grow is just super huge. He's been a vocal leader for the past 2 years that I've been there. And then, I know for this year, for sure, he's continued to grow into that vocal leader spotlight. And he's got a great way to motivate people with words. He knows the right ways to communicate with everybody. And he's also just super encouraging and motivational. Every word that comes out of his mouth is positive. There's nothing negative that he could ever say about anybody. And if he does ever say anything negative, then it's coming from a good place, that he wants to help you grow in that area.
Yeah. So, Ollie, how do you think this ends? What do you make of the idea that maybe Tennessee's offense, there was just some growth that was needed, and maybe is it possible they'll just start to peak at the right time, which is late November, just in time for the playoff?
Yeah, I see them putting together the pieces to be more consistent offensively. I don't know And I think a lot of people's expectations are that this offense is just magically going to go back to 2022 and we're going to be putting up 50, 60 points every single game and having a party in the end zone. I don't know if it's necessarily going to get all the way back to that point right away. I think maybe in the next year or so with Nico continuing to grow in his career that it'll get to that point. But I think as far as this season, they're continuing to put pieces together to have a successful offense with where they're at in the season. And I mean, each week they're improving, and that's what you want to see out of a team, and especially for a team that's chasing championships. You want to see them to continue to improve. You don't want to see them hit a peak sometime at some point in the season. If you ever want to see them hit a peak, you want it to be that last time that they're ever on the field.
Now, Caleb's been incredibly hard on Max Gilbert after he missed 3
I have not. I've been the most offensive. No, Dave has been hard on Max Gilbert. Dave wants to trade him.
Okay. Trade him. Here's the thing that scares me, Ollie, and I hope nothing but the best for all the guys out there, all 85 in the walk-ons. But here's the thing that scares me from Tennessee's perspective. You have a defensive team, at least we think that now. We'll see what the offense does. You have a defensive team that runs the football and is probably going to have to win a game close, whether it's Georgia or it gets into the college football playoff. So if you're Josh Heupel, do you go to him? Do you talk to him? Do you leave him alone because kickers are kind of quirky? I mean, how do you handle that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess part of that just depends on what relationship Max and Coach Heupel have with one another. But I mean, too, I know just the job that Coach Eberle does over there with that special teams group. And then I know just as a special teams group, how close-knit that group is together. And so I'm sure they all have their own accountability metrics and know how to lift people up when they need it. And I know Max has probably needed it this week. That's not like him to go out there and go 0 for 3. And I'm sure that was not what he wanted to do, especially in a big game like that. And like you said, as we start moving down to further spots in this season, the games are only going to get closer. And I mean, you're going to need a field goal or two to be able to edge yourself out of some contests. So it's a big spot for him to be able to correct whatever mistakes it was that he made that led to the misses against Kentucky. But I know the job that Coach Eberle does down there, and I know what that special teams group is and how close-knit they are, that I know they're going to be able to correct any issues that they have over there.
Okay, as a teammate, it's kind of like a pitcher throwing a no-hitter, okay?
Yeah.
You don't want to say or do you? I mean, do you say anything during the week like, "Hey, Skipper, you're going to be fine. You went 0 for 3, but we believe it," or do you just kind of stay away and let it be status quo?
I mean, a mix of both. It just depends on what kind of relationship you have with him and what kind of personality he has. I mean, with some guys, it's like you can joke around with them after it in the week and just kind of give them some tough love here and there. And then some guys, you just kind of let it be, know that they're handling it on their own. Because, some people take failure in different ways. And some people, it crushes them and they don't want to talk about it. Some people, it helps them to joke about it and move on from it. So, again, it just depends on what type of relationship personality people have with them. I think for the most part, like for me personally, after a bad game, I needed about 2 days not to talk about it. And then you could start coming up and joking with me and everything. And then it would kind of make it feel a little bit better that it's smoothed over. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, maybe just kind of let it sit for a couple days.
You're like my buddy in high school. Like if Powell High School, I got my PhD, Powell High Diploma. But if Powell won, we'd go out on Friday night and do things that we shouldn't be doing. And then we'd probably go out on Saturday night. If Powell lost, I'd call him on Saturday morning. I'd say, "How you doing?" He goes, "Sleeping." He didn't want to talk for like 2 days. Our poll question is this, and I'm just going to ask you this question. I'm most confident in the Vols quarterback play, offensive line play, running back play, wide receiver play. Now everybody's voting running back, and I've got no argument with that, but I'm thinking depth too. So I want to factor that in. So you're most confident in which of those aspects of Tennessee's offense?
I mean, I gotta say, just if I'm looking production wise, obviously I'm looking running backs. They've put in a lot of work this season, and it's been fairly fun to watch. But I mean, as far as just what I'm most confident in, I mean, if I'm going from just what I'm most confident in to I know they're going to perform each week. I mean, I know Dylan Sampson and the running backs, I know they're going to perform every single week. But I mean, I feel that same level of confidence in the offensive line, and I'm sure everybody should be like, whoa, you sound crazy. But I mean, I'm confident that our offensive line go out there against some of the best defensive linemen out there and compete every single game. I've seen them do it time and time again. Does it look 100% beautiful every single play? No, but I'm confident in their ability to go out there and handle anybody that we ask them to.
Ollie, over under 45 points.
I'm going under.
You don't think Tennessee's scoring 45?
No, I'm going under this week. That's no knock against. It's close. It's close, but it's under.
Yeah, and I do want to ask you about that. Great setup, Caleb, because there's no need really to lay 100 on an opponent or 70, as Josh Heupel likes to do with an onside kick. But there, I say that, but there is, because how much does it help if Tennessee's up 30 points or whatever, and you can sit the starters before? Yeah, there's a pretty big game against some other next week. How much does that help physically the way you feel on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, heading into the next week if you can sit out a half?
Yeah, no, I mean, it helps a ton. And I mean, I'm sure if they can get it to that point in the game, they'll want to, because you obviously not looking ahead, but looking ahead, the Bulldogs next week are a lot tougher than the Bulldogs you got this week. So, I mean, you want to be able to try to find maybe a situation where you can sit some of your key guys for a little bit, just to make sure that they are 100% ready for what is now going to be your biggest game of the season, because this one's going to set you up for potentially an SEC championship and a lock in the playoffs compared to fighting to see what 10-2 is going to be able to get you in the postseason. So I think they definitely want to get to that point, and I think they have all the ability to get to that point in this football game if they want to.
Okay, Ollie. So you probably heard Bob Kesling is retiring. I have endorsed John Wilkerson as being the next play-by-play voice. I'm sure you know who he is.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to go ahead, and if you want the job, endorse you as the color commentator. Would you be interested in that job?
Yeah, no, I'd take it. I'd love it. So.
All right.
Who couldn't get enough of me, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can't get enough of Ollie. All right,
yeah.
Ollie. Great job, buddy. We appreciate you as always. I am going to show you. I am going to pull up one little thing that I want to show with Ollie here, and that is, Ollie, you've been in this office for a long time, and you've only got Star Wars memorabilia behind you, and you've got one entire cabinet that's completely empty. I mean,
hey,
are you not planning on staying at this job, or what's going on?
I'm staying. You should see my boss's office. It's a lot blander than mine is. So I mean, I've got some stuff on the walls over here. I mean, I'm working on it. But my next thing, I'm getting some of my jerseys framed, and they're going on the walls at some point. But there's only so many little knickknacks that I could pick up here and there. So
I know.
Trying to build it up.
Great stuff, Ollie. We appreciate you more than you know.
All right, appreciate y'all. Have a good one.
Thanks, Ollie. Ollie would be a really good color commentator, like no joke, because I like the thought of having an offensive lineman in there, because I think the casual fan misses a lot of that, Caleb, what goes on in O-line play. So that's a great thing to point out, because let's face it, the color commentator most oftentimes is just, it's going to say, oh, that tackle was made by.
Yeah, or a great tackle, great play, or you're in great shape here if you're Tennessee. Yeah, I agree. An offensive lineman would be great, because they could actually break down the they would be there's offensive line lingo is the most confusing lingo in football for anybody. If you don't play offensive line, it's the thing you know the least. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Yes.
It's because they have their own language, their own fundamentals that literally nobody else knows, honestly.
I mean, we use the term 3 technique, and I know you know what it is, and you know I know what it is, but I sometimes wonder when we say it if some of our listeners are going, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah. That's just for the defensive line. The offensive line, it's like they have blocking schemes of like, outside of quarterback, it's the second most complicated position in football, and it may be more complicated than quarterback, depending on the position you play.
I want to remind you, go to TristarHatsCo.com, TristarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOK. Get 10% off this fantastic memorabilia.
TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Okay, coming up, I'm going to absolutely be sacrilegious when it comes to Tennessee football. We are going to compare Tennessee's 2024 defense to the 1998 defense, in which I covered, in which I wrote a book about, in which you can purchase if you would like to. This QR code will take you right to it. We have editions that are autographed by Tennessee Vols. We have editions that are autographed just by me. And yes, that may bring the price down a little bit, but not too much. So you can order the book right there if you would like. And we would certainly appreciate that and appreciate you supporting Off the Hook Sports. If you'd like to, also a super chat goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. He's just 4 months old, but
5 now.
5 months old. Listen, the kid's going to be 15 one day, and I'll still think he's like 2. That's just the way guys are. Do you know how old your friends' kids are?
Yes, I actually do. I can say them straight off the bat.
I don't. I asked somebody the other day, I said, so how's middle school going for your kid? And he goes, she's going to college. All right, he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why this Tennessee defense is very, very comparable to the 98 defense. There, I said it. And Florida gives Billy Napier the dreaded vote of confidence, which means you're being fired. Stay tuned. More after this.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Look at the new prize you can win. I'm going to reach back. Check this out. What is this, you may ask yourself if you're on an audio platform or you can't read this handwriting. This is an autographed mini helmet by the one, the only, John Henderson, thanks to our friends at Sports Treasures. Now you're asking yourself, how can I win this? And also, how can I win a prize that will be given away later today, which will be a t-shirt or it will be a book. That's your choice. Celebrate 98, the untold stories of Tennessee's 1998 national championship team. All you have to do is join Hooker's Corner for just $9.98 a month. If you join, then bam, you're eligible for all those great prizes. We'll give away the John Henderson helmet at the end of the month. We'll give away a prize later today. And also, you'll be registered to win Rick Terry's Great 8 Garmin Challenge, in which you can win a Garmin worth over $1,000 when we hit 8,000 subscribers. And you are a member of Hooker's Corner, which is just $9.98. All right, Caleb. I feel like I can bring this topic up, whereas somebody that's considerably younger than me probably shouldn't, because I did cover the 1998 team. So I can give you, I believe, some perspective that only an old man can. So when I brought up to you, this defense is comparable to the 1998 defense, which essentially won Tennessee a national championship. What was your first reaction? Was it, oh, Dave's been drinking again?
No, it's basically it's Dave wanted to take a conversation that he and I sometimes have in the ether in an unserious way and say, hey, why don't we put this on the radio? Or why don't we put this on YouTube real quick? Why don't we just go ahead and put it out there for the public?
Okay. So let's break it down by position. And some of these are difficult because Tennessee plays a nickelback now. So that's going to affect
Greatest
some of
band
these.
ever. Love Nickelback. They weren't out in 1998. I mean, the 98 team wasn't even graced with the amazing music of Nickelback.
Terrible band. By the way, those on the poll question saying I'm most confident in Vols running back play 94%. So we can just chuck that one. That was a terrible one. All right. So now the new one. Dave says Vols defense is comparable to 1998. He's crazy onto something. So I ask you this on the message board. Where do you think that there is a bona fide advantage either way? So you can tell me 98 safeties versus 24 safeties. You can tell me the defensive ends, whatever. But here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down by position, and then we'll get Caleb's take and my take as well. So I want to start back to front. Back to front. Safeties. This group is better than 1998.
That's crazy.
No, it's not.
That's insane.
Okay. That's Deion Grant, an All-American. That's Fred White, who they were a perfect fit together, like two pieces of the puzzle. It's clearly the safeties in 1998. And that, God bless Will Brooks, that's not comparable. Would we agree on that?
There is absolutely no way any of the safeties would start on that 98 team unless you moved Boo Carter to safety. He could be in the rotation, but not as a freshman. So, yeah, there's absolutely no way the safeties the safeties in 1998 are just.
Well, I'll tell you this too.
Gold standard.
Ask Brian Darden. They would have beat the attitude out of Boo Carter before he got on the field. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I think Boo Carter's mentally tough enough to where he would have handled it and he would have accepted it. I think they would have liked Boo Carter's attitude a little bit.
Yeah. I know Fred White is very high on Boo Carter. Okay. Defensive line better than 1998.
We'll get to that. We'll get to the line.
Is what Ed says. I know. I'm just giving a shout out to those guys. All right. So cornerback. Basically, we're talking about Dwayne Goodrich versus Jermod McCoy. I'm willing to say that's a wash. So that would take you to the other corner. That was probably the one Achilles.
Steve Johnson, was that?
Yeah, that was probably the one Achilles heel for that team. Nothing against Steve, good buddy, and we were broadcasting majors together. But right now, I would take Ricky Gibson over, and they alternated Steve and somebody else who suddenly escapes me. But they alternated those guys, and that was always kind of an issue at that other cornerback spot. So corner, I would say 2024.
I'll lean with you because of the Ricky Gibson advantage, but I don't think Dwayne Goodrich and Jermod McCoy is a wash. It's hard to say this now because of what happened, which derailed Dwayne Goodrich's football career, but the Cowboys drafted Dwayne Goodrich to be their next Deion Sanders. As much as I like Jermod McCoy, no one's going to say this is our next Darrelle Revis when they draft him in the NFL.
Okay. Ed is for UT, agrees with me. Cornerback is better than 1998. Now, this is where it gets difficult because you have two different defensive formations. So here's the way I suggest it. We do interior linebackers and we do outside linebackers. Okay. So we're essentially saying Jeremiah Thielander versus Al Wilson.
Come on.
It's Al Wilson. Okay. Now, if it were Keenan Pili, I'm not saying.
No.
Right. If it were Keenan Pili, we could at least have the discussion physically, right?
No.
But, well, okay. We would be more apt to have the discussion than Thielander, right?
If I had the number one draft pick and I was drafting a Tennessee player and couldn't draft a quarterback all time in history, Reggie White would be number one. Al Wilson would be number two.
Okay.
Al Wilson we keep forgetting this. Al Wilson in the NFL was on track to a Hall of Fame career. The only thing that kept him under the radar was he could never start over Ray Lewis in the Pro Bowl. But again, it was Ray Lewis. But also, he got his career derailed by a neck injury. The dude was a 4-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. He wasn't, everyone talks about him as just a leader. He was an amazing player.
No, I agree. Now, let me argue this. In 98, he missed, 3 games because of injury? So
yes.
Keenan Pili, Thielander together. Am I getting anywhere, or is
I would take Al Wilson for 6 games over Thielander as long as I got him against Florida and Arkansas and in the national title. No, I'm sorry. Al Wilson is like I'm not going to let you disrespect Al Wilson like that, Dave.
Fair. And I'm just trying to provide a sounding board for you because I agree with you. You know that
he should have his number retired.
Yes. Ed and General Ursus say linebacker all around. Now, let me make this argument. If you're talking about outside linebacker, you're talking about 2 guys in Raynoch Thompson and Eric Westmoreland. Okay. So you only have one outside linebacker now because of the way they play with the nickelback. So if you wanted to say Arian Carter compared to Raynoch, I could make an argument for Arian Carter.
I think you could definitely say Arian Carter. I would say Arian Carter, but okay, here's why I would say Raynoch.
Adam beat us to the punch and agrees with us. Great job, Adam.
You're basing this off of more potential than actual production. I think Arian Carter will go down to be a better linebacker than Raynoch Thompson. But is Arian Carter right now better than Raynoch Thompson was in 1998? Raynoch Thompson was much more experienced playing in the system in 1998. And I think that's where you kind of draw the difference a little bit. Also, part of this is, let's be fair. There's more put on the outside linebackers today than there was in 98. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Yes. No, that's very fair. And let's face it, Raynoch Thompson, because of what was in front of him and behind him, he was allowed to play free and he hit people like he was mad at them.
Yes. Didn't he and Fred White have like a joke over like trying to alternate over who could get a sack at different times? Was that Raynoch Thompson that did that?
Probably. That sounds like a Fredish thing to do. All right. And I mean that as a compliment. And then the defensive line.
Let's start with the tackles and then we'll go to the edge.
Okay. All right. You want to break it down? All right. Start with the tackles. What do you got?
All right. So we're talking Darwin Walker, a longtime NFL starter, and Billy Ratliff, a would have been longtime NFL starter had his career not been derailed by injury.
Jeff Coleman.
And Jeff Coleman. That's 3 guys. All right. This one, you got Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, Jackson Boy, Elijah Simmons. I can just go down this list. Tyree West, Dominic Bailey. Look, I'll say this. I don't think anybody on this defensive line at tackle is better than Darwin Walker or Billy Ratliff. I do think the depth of this interior defensive line makes this interior defensive line better.
I agree. I can't add anything to that. You summed it up. Defensive end / edge rusher, which we have to say now.
And this is another part of where the format has changed over time, because defensive ends back in the day were always with their hands in the ground.
You mean they didn't ask Sean Ellis to drop into coverage?
No, they didn't.
Like they do James Pierce. You're right.
All
right.
Who could win a race between Sean Ellis and Will Brooks? Okay, so
Sean Ellis. Close.
That's actually, and that's be the difference of the 98 defense versus now. Okay. I'm gonna say, look, we're talking like Sean Ellis in that system versus James Pierce in this system. And that's borderline a wash, because as great as James Pierce is, we keep forgetting that Sean Ellis replaced Leonard Little and was as good.
Yeah. Sean Ellis, for the record, ran a 4.85 in the 40. Are you taking Will Brooks over that?
No, I don't know. I honestly, that Will Brooks interception, I'm like, that looked like Tom Brady running for a touchdown, or Peyton Manning. But okay, I'm not going to be mean to Will Brooks, but let's talk about, so Sean Ellis versus James Pierce. I mean, you could probably go with James Pierce, but I might go with Sean Ellis. But Dave, either way, I'll still say the ends favor this team, because I think the other end spot is better. Look, I mean, people are going to disagree with me. I think, going to Joshua Josephs, moving Tyree West out there sometimes, doing that, those guys are better than Corey Terry.
I agree with that, but Sean Ellis was the best of all that we've mentioned. He's better than James Pierce. He could anchor down from a run standpoint.
He could.
He's a better overall defensive end. I mean, and he had a great NFL career too.
Oh, he had a great NFL career. All right, so let's. He
was the 12th overall pick. Do we think James Pierce is going to be better than 12?
He could.
I've heard him projected now at 15th a little bit. I think his stock slipped just slightly.
Okay, so let's do this, because I think it's as close as it is. I think we have to say that the 98 team wins, and I'll break down why. I think that ends, defensive tackles, outside linebacker, and cornerback, we'll say I'll even give you all those. I'll say they all slightly favor this team. Okay, I will. But they all those, you would say this team gets a slight edge, right?
I believe that games are won in the trenches, which I know sounds old school, and you're ready for me to go John Madden, pow, boom. But the reason I would take this defense is I think it is considerably better on the defensive line because of depth. So I would take this defense compared to the 98 defense, and I can't believe I'm saying that.
No, see, and this is where I disagree with you. I think the defensive line is not considerably better. I think it's better slightly. I think the depth is enough to push it slightly over the edge. And so it's slightly better at defensive line, slightly better at outside linebacker, slightly better at cornerback. But Dave, safeties and inside linebacker, the gap is so insane. I mean, let's call it what it is, Dave. The gap is insane between Al Wilson versus these inside linebackers. Heck, I'm not so sure Keenan Peely and Jeremiah Thielander could start over Chris Ranzor, who filled in for Al Wilson. So, I mean, the gap it is
over Ramsor.
Ramsor was pretty darn good when he filled in for Al. The gap is just when you have Al Wilson and that level of a gap, and then you have Deion Grant and Fred White, the gap between those three alone is just so significant. And you're acknowledging yourself, the defensive line. You're actually saying Sean Ellis is better than James Pierce. So while you're saying the defensive line is better because of the depth inside, you're making the case the ends are better from the 98 team.
Yep.
So I think the gap's too great.
There's no better option for your home search. Chattanooga Mortgage, chatmortgage.com with 2 T's, chatmortgage.com. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chatmortgage.com, chatmortgage.com. We also remind you, Hound Dogs of Knoxville, champions look good in orange. That is Hound Dogs of Knoxville. We join along with the one, the only John Adams each and every Tuesday. His appearance is brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now, saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
All right, can we pull up the release that they sent out on the Twitter? And it's Florida sticking with Billy Napier. So I want to read through this release and ask if anybody actually believes that this is going to happen, because it's called the dreaded vote of confidence in media circles. And may I share with you my one press conference that was the dreaded vote of confidence?
I want to hear it. Let's go.
Do you remember when Tony Harris, in plain clothes with an ankle injury, charged down the side of the court and wanted to get in a fight, I believe, with Florida's players? Was it Florida? Do you remember this?
I was too young at the time. I do not remember this. Sorry.
That's sad. All right. So anyway, they have a press conference because the late Gary Lundy referred to Tony Harris as a punk, which somehow was by Tony Harris alleged to be a homosexual term, which I've never heard. And that got Tennessee's Doug Dickey, who I'm sure did not know of any modern terms whatsoever and could have been talked into anything. He held a press conference. Well, the first part of it was defending Tony Harris and calling out the late Gary Lundy. The second part of it was Jerry Green's our coach. He's going to be here for a long time. He was fired 3 months later. So this basically means you're getting fired. This to me, if I'm Billy Napier, pull it up, is more damning than not saying anything. Now, I find it interesting that Florida has themselves in a bit of a pickle, in my opinion, Caleb. So I'm going to bring that up. It said, Gator Nation. This is from Scott Strickland, who used to handle interview requests at Mississippi State. So surely he's qualified to decide who should be the head coach of Florida. It says, Gator Nation, I wanted to let you know that Billy Napier will continue as head football coach of the Florida Gators. As we've seen this past several weeks, the young men on this team represent what it means to be a Gator. Their resolve, effort, and execution are evident in their performance and growth each week, building a foundation that promises greater success next season and beyond. UF's commitment to excellence in a championship caliber program is unwavering. In these times of change across college athletics, we are dedicated to a disciplined, stable approach and focused on long-term sustained success for Gator athletes, recruits, and then blah, 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 on and on and on. I'm confident that Billy will meet the challenges. Okay, no, you're not. Or you wouldn't put this out. Here's what this is. This is the same thing that we just talked about with the late Mike Hamilton doing an exclusive interview with me to see how people would respond. So right now, this came out yesterday. Scott Strickland, who again was in charge of setting up interviews at Mississippi State, but is now in charge of hiring a football coach at Florida. Doesn't seem analogous to me at all. But he puts this out there to find out what his email is going to look like on Friday morning. And if 80% of the people say, "What are you, an idiot?" which I'm sure they did, then he's going to make a change. If 80% of the people say, "Right on, that Billy, man, he's getting it done," then he's not going to make a change. But Caleb, I ask you, what do you make of this release? To me, it's just pathetic. And especially a guy that was in media relations. Why do you do this?
Yeah, it's also, I'm with you. I've seen this done before too. Every time it's done, it doesn't end up the way you want. The last time this happened with the Florida coach, you want to know when it happened, Dave?
Zook?
No. 2013, Florida went 4-8 under Will Muschamp. Jeremy Foley comes out and says, "I have the fullest confidence in Will Muschamp." A year later, Will Muschamp is fired.
Yes.
And
here's the other thing that's bad about that letter. Should it have been signed by Scott Strickland or somebody else? Because he's going to get fired with Billy Napier.
Well, that's where I think this comes from, Dave. I think Scott Strickland is worried about the recruiting aspect, and he wants to stick with Billy Napier, but he doesn't want to hurt Billy Napier's recruiting class, but he wants to stick with him because he needs to save his own job. So he releases his statement because he does want to stick with Napier. He's going to give Napier every chance to work out. Napier was his guy. And you know this, Dave. This is the thing with NFL GMs. When you make the pick, Jeremy Foley, to his credit, is one of the only athletic directors to do this, by the way. Jeremy Foley is the only athletic director I know who will be like, "Yeah, I was wrong with that hire. I'll fire him in 2 years and get another one." Most athletic directors don't do that. They are like, "I will throw every dollar at you possible to make you succeed because I need to be proven right with my decision." And that's what Scott Strickland is doing here. And you're right. Scott Strickland is borderline done. By the way, I just looked it up. The Tony Harris situation was against Kentucky. It was after Tennessee lost 103-95 against Kentucky, and on February the 14th, Doug Dickey did. I just read the press conference. It's on UT Sports still to this day. His letter, he literally says, "Oh yeah, I pulled it up on UT Sports right now." When he went at Gary Lundy, and he talked about all the success that was had under Jerry Green, and then he goes, "None of us is happy that we've seen a drift toward mediocrity in recent games. As we move toward the home stretch of the Southeastern Conference season, we need the unity of coaches, players, and fans who comprise the University of Tennessee." I love when people say something like that in response to a columnist, because they don't get that columnists are not fans and are not in it for unity. And yeah.
Let me tell you how else this is sketchy. This is according to Saturday Down South. Multiple sources close to the program told Saturday Down South that part of the logic in retaining Napier for 2025, as opposed to paying his $26.5 million buyout, half of which would be due up front, is because they can spend that money on NIL. I mean, it to me is baffling that those don't come out of two different funds. I mean, I run a business. I've got a spreadsheet, and the same money that goes to whoever is on the show isn't the same money that goes to pay our website hosting fee, or maybe in a tight month we wouldn't have a website. I mean, just the fact that those two numbers are coming out of essentially the same place, and you can't go tell a booster that, "Hey, buddy, I need $10 more million to save our hide because Billy Napier can't coach his way out of a wet paper bag," is troubling to me if I'm a Gator fan.
Well, I'm reading it now, and you're absolutely right. And this is an issue. Florida, we talked about this with the Jaden Rashada incident a year ago, whenever. Florida cobbled their NIL money together really, 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 really late. They screwed it up badly. And they're paying for it. And Dave, the biggest reason they're paying for it, Mario Cristobal can't coach worth a lick, in my opinion. Miami's undefeated right now because Miami immediately got a collective together. They got a top 5 collective very quickly. There's a reason that Miami's the class of the state of Florida right now, despite the fact that they're stuck in the ACC and should struggle recruiting.
Yep.
I
agree with that.
Florida,
and here's the scary thing. If you're Florida, if Miami, and I don't yet believe in that coaching staff. I think they've kind of caught lightning in a bottle. I don't think they can consistently win there. I don't know about you, but if you do consistently win there and you put South Florida in a headlock from a recruiting standpoint, you've got an advantage over Florida State, who suddenly is reeling, and Florida, who is headed by a guy. Did I mention that Scott Strickland was in charge of setting up interviews at Mississippi State?
Oh yeah, you did.
Coach, are you available at 4:30? I can be. Why don't you leave me alone? Oh, I guess I'll go hire the head coach at Florida.
Yeah, he also, what was, he didn't hire Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. He was promoted to athletic director at Mississippi State, and I'm trying to think of a successful move he made at Mississippi State, because he hired Joe Moorhead, who replaced Dan Mullen, I believe. No, Dan Mullen was at Mississippi State the whole time he was there. He never he never made a significant hire. How did he go from...
He wasn't the AD at Mississippi State.
No, he was. He was promoted to AD at 2010 and stayed there for 6 years. Never made a hire.
Work Truck's all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Truck saves you time. With less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work, the process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you that get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor in the service industry, remember Work Trucks with an X, the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks, Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go to Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Why risk chancing your future in business on a wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. They'll find a perfect truck. If they don't have it, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. That is Work Trucks. We saved the best for last. Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. And we'll have Caleb's picks and bets. As Caleb, are you willing to say that your season has been at best average when it comes to picks?
Not average. It's been terrible. It has been so unpredictable. This is one of my worst years. I'm going to have to rethink my method going forward. It has not been a successful method this year.
If not for my 3 time zone rule with the Big Ten, how bad would you be?
I bought into your 3 time zone rule and then missed on all of them last week.
Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
All right, Caleb, let's get to your picks. What do you got, sir?
All right. So all the games this week that I'm required to pick, because I require myself to make picks, are SEC games, funny enough, because there are no top 25 games not involving Big Ten teams or not involving SEC teams, Dave. So, but then I'll give you my best bets, and they're all a little bit different. So we'll start with Florida at Texas. I think Florida, they're 22.5-point underdogs. We just spoke about this. I think they cover. I think Texas has some fundamental issues, and I think Florida's going to cover at Texas. And I think those fundamental issues will lead to Florida scoring a decent enough bid. So I take the over 47 as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say
that's crazy.
Yeah, I just don't imagine Florida winning a game. It's too good a theater for them to put out that letter via Twitter. And
I didn't say they're going to win. I said they're not going to lose by 22.5.
They're going to get killed. All right, what do you got next?
Georgia at Ole Miss. I think Georgia covers a 2.5-point spread, and I got the over 55. Whenever Georgia has to play hard, they play hard, and I think they'll beat the brakes off Ole Miss, honestly.
I agree with that. Who's next?
Vanderbilt at home against South Carolina. South Carolina is a 5.5-point favorite. I say take Vanderbilt plus 5.5 and take the over 45. I think Diego Pavia is going to give South Carolina some trouble. There's a clear difference this year between Vanderbilt at home and Vanderbilt on the road. And at home, they are actually dangerous. So I don't know. Maybe that construction just throws teams off. So
I never thought anybody would speak the words that you have just spoken out of your mouth.
I didn't. Did you think? Did you
Playing
think
Vanderbilt at home is tough?
I didn't think I would either. But
I can't argue with it. All right, what's next?
All right, before I get to Tennessee, the big one of the weekend: Alabama at LSU. Taking Alabama to cover the 2.5-point spread. I've lost all faith in Brian Kelly in big games. I think he chokes way too much. I'm going to take the over 58.5. I think Brian Kelly has lost his defense. He's made too many obvious defensive mistakes this year, and he's supposed to be a defensive guy. So I think Alabama covers. I say take the over. I'm going to say Alabama wins this one like 35-28.
I'm going to take LSU because our guy Kyle is from Louisiana, the Louisiana area, and he's in charge of Double D piping. So who you got next?
Okay. Very great, astute analysis there.
Thank you.
Oklahoma's 2.5.
By the way, did you see Nick Saban say they brought him out this big breakfast spread, and he only eats oatmeal pies for breakfast. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but
yes, he only eats, and so they bring him out this huge breakfast spread on College game day, and he goes, "What's all this crap?" But he didn't say crap live on the air talking about, and it looks delicious. It's like maybe you should open up your taste buds a little bit. All right, what's next, Caleb?
Reminds me of when Lee Corso was about to pick, and he goes, "F it." He said it.
F that, and F you, and F everybody.
All right, so next, Missouri and Oklahoma.
Godspeed to Kirk Herbstreit's dog. Go ahead.
Yes, that's a tough decision. I know you had to do that last year. It's the toughest decision you have to make, I'm sure, sometimes. Missouri and Oklahoma.
I'm very fortunate because I feel certain that my current dog will outlive me. What do you got next, Caleb?
Missouri, Oklahoma. I say take Missouri plus 2.5. I can't believe they're 2.5-point underdog, so I'm going to take them plus 2.5. But take the over 41.5. I think they'll score enough on Oklahoma, and I'll take the over in that game.
That's crazy.
Nah, I think those are two teams headed in different directions. I like Oklahoma to win outright in a low-scoring game. Caleb?
Interesting. Okay. All right. So these are my best bets, and I'll give you the Tennessee game. My over of the week. Clemson, Virginia Tech, take the over 53. I think there's going to be a lot of scoring in that one.
Really?
I do.
That's crazy.
I do. Clemson's defense is terrible, and Virginia Tech does have a good offense. They just have a coach with 2 brain cells. So there's that. All right.
You can get 2 earrings. The Fire Opals, Rick Terry Jewelry Design, rickterryjewelry.com. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. The Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition. Go, Caleb. What do you got?
Notre Dame, Florida State. I'm taking the under 42.5. I think this will be
I'm going to go. This is my upset special. Florida State is going to beat Notre Dame straight up.
You think they're going to beat Notre Dame straight up?
What's the spread? What's the spread?
I didn't look at the spread. That was just my under.
You didn't even look at this for yourself.
Notre Dame's favored by 26.
Yeah, this is a Florida State cover. It's a Florida State win outright. Take the money line. What's the money line?
Notre Dame, Florida State money line is plus 1870. You could get a big payout. Dave, just for some good money, I might do it. Why not?
It's $10 between friends. All right, Caleb, what's next?
Yeah. All right, so up next, we're going to look at my cover of the week, and you're going to disagree with me, Dave. My 2 covers, the underdog cover. I got Florida plus 22.5 at Texas. I don't care. I think that's your best underdog cover of the week. Florida plus 22.5.
That's crazy.
Nah, Texas. I think they're going to play really well. I think the disruption at quarterback probably had a bigger effect on them than we mentioned at the time. Even though it was to a pretty good quarterback in a Manning, it still was a disruption there. It can hold up your.
And I think that disruption is still holding them back. That's my take.
Okay. All right. Who's next? Tennessee?
2 more and then Tennessee. But my favorite cover of the week, the team that's favored that will cover, Penn State. They're 12.5-point favorites against Washington. It's the 3-time zone rule. They're at home against Washington, and Washington's not a top 10 team, so Penn State's going to do the
3-time zone rule.
You suck, you jackass.
What are you talking about? I've never even heard of anything like that.
You're the one who brought it up. Wait, so you disagree? You think Washington covers at 12 points? You think Washington won't lose by more than 12?
Yes.
at Penn. No, it's Penn State's favored in this game. What does Penn State do? They always look good when it's not a big game. So
I think James Franklin leaves the field, and instead of screaming, "What's your name? What's your name?" to Heckler, he says, "Can you play? Can you play?" Because we need help.
Wow.
All right.
Well, my super dog of the week before Tennessee is I don't go as all out as you do. Maybe I should because I'm as bad anyway on my bets, and at least I could have a chance at a big payout to make the money back. But I'm going to do a safe super dog. Colorado's favored by 4 at Texas Tech. I think Coach Prime and Colorado lose to Texas Tech. I'm not sure they can handle the success they're getting right now.
Hey now. I agree with that. All right. Who's next? Tennessee.
And finally, my Tennessee pick of the week. I'm still going. This is just my go-to, and it's been failing, and it failed last week, but I don't care. Tennessee minus 24.5 against Mississippi State and the over 61.5. I think points galore in this one, baby. Love the points.
Okay, I'm going to drop my pick in the chat. If you would like to give it a read, we would encourage that. But I don't think this is close. I think Tennessee's coming together at the right time. And I will tell you this. I think Tennessee wins this football game by an easy margin because they realize the importance of getting guys a rest before the Georgia game, 48-9. And if I could change it, I'd probably go 48-6. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We'll talk to you after the game. Last Look post-game show brought to you by Campbell Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. For